Hi, my name is Thien An. I'm an MS2 at the AAEM School of Medicine, and I'm excited to be talking about boundaries and how that plays into emergency medicine today.
Wonderful. Hi, I'm Robyn Hitchcock, Dr. Robyn Hitchcock. I am a residency trained board certified emergency physician. I have been a doctor since 92. I finished my residency in 95, so I've been a doctor for over 30 years. I practiced at the bedside, including my residency, for about 32. I am now on my post-clinical career. I do a desk job now where I do chart reviews. But I'm looking back at a 30-year career and just some of the things I wish I knew when I was starting out. So I can just share my journey and all the twists and turns that I didn't anticipate.
Yeah, that'd be great. We're happy to have you today and excited to hear about your journey. Tell us a little bit about your life and your journey in emergency medicine.
So I started, so I trained at Henry Ford, and when I trained in the 90s, it was still a new field. A lot of my friends who were surgeons mocked me for going into emergency medicine. They said, why would you want to be a triage nurse when you spent all that time going to medical school? It wasn't really acknowledged by many people as a real profession. Like, they thought it was a trend or a phase. There were only 15 programs in the entire country when I was applying. So it was really still a new, even though it had been around for almost 20 years, it was still a very new up and coming specialty. So that's one thing. It was a very different milieu at that time. So I ended up going to Henry Ford, and I did my residency at Henry Ford, mostly because I had done a lot of resuscitation research when I was in medical school, and I thought I would continue down that resuscitation. So I had trained with Tom Scalea and his surgical resuscitation, and I went to work with Manny Rivers and his team over there. But when I graduated, I just went in a different direction. We had done a rotation in Hawaii, and I got offered a 1-year job there. And I said, okay. People actually ask, why would you do a 1-year job in Hawaii? I think the question is, why wouldn't you do a 1-year job in Hawaii?
Yeah, why not? The beach, the weather.
I didn't have kids. I was 95. I was almost 30. What better time to just go to Hawaii for a year?
Mm-hmm.
And so I found out, much to my surprise, that I loved it. I loved Hawaii. I loved the job. I loved the location. What I didn't love was being the locums there. So I was working at Kaiser, and Kaiser is a physician-run group, and it's usually very physician-forward. But as the locums, I was actually getting paid half what the full-time doctors were, with a really crappy benefit package, which is different than what locums usually are. But in that model, when you're in Hawaii, you can do whatever you want, right? You're going to have a whole funnel of people coming in. So as the year came to a close, and I was sharing that job with somebody else, with my best friend from residency, actually, Tina. And as the year came to a close, I went to my director and said, I really like it here. If you have an opening, I would really like to consider a full-time position. What are you looking at? And he goes, yeah, we could hire on a full-time person, but if I have a full-time person, then if they have grievances, I have to listen to them. And if I want to get rid of them, there's due process, and that's just really inconvenient for me. You could do another year of locums here and continue to get paid half what everybody else around you is making for doing the same job. Or you could leave, but I know you don't want to leave. So that was the offer that I got, was to continue getting, and when you're doing it for a year and you're right out of residency and it's still more than you made as a resident, that was fun. But after a while, you go to we all had the same board when we had physical charts that we would pick up. And a chart would go in the rack, and all of a sudden, they'd have to check on this one or check on the lab or walk in. So not only are you getting paid half as much, you're doing 2/3 of the work. But I was finally able to find a remote job and get away from the bedside. And that was my ultimate solution. I've had some toxic bosses that wouldn't treat me fairly. I've had to deal with the boys club and gaslighting. some silly locum stuff, a lot of lack of admin support, even up to last year. So there it is.
Couldn't help but to keep on finding myself say wow over and over again, like the shock, the disgust. It's mostly a shock. I feel not enough people come out and say all these stories. So thank you so much for telling us your story, and it's incredible to see someone really advocate for themselves. Have you always been this courageous and bold for speaking out about yourself?
When I was little, they used to just say I had a big mouth and they couldn't shut me up. So I'm gonna go with yes.
That's so funny. So you never had like a turning point or anything, so where one day you're like, enough is enough, this is it?
No, I've always been the person who spoke my mind. That's my MO. And nobody really likes conflict, but I don't particularly avoid it, because not saying something when it's bothering me, to me, is more toxic than getting into the conflict. So I've gotten wiser. I've chosen my words more. I'm a little more diplomatic. I hear you saying all my palliative care skills. Those things are really hard for me. My last couple of years, I did a lot of palliative care training. It was actually trained as a palliative care consultant, and I did that for my last couple of years, and I really enjoyed it. But those conversations don't come naturally. Waiting, listening, following up. I hear you saying this, tell me more. And those tools have helped me in a lot of these. I wish I had these tools earlier in my career, both in my professional and my personal life. I think they would have smoothed up a lot of conflicts that I had.
No, it seems like you ran into quite the obstacle in your career. Do you think that the systems, the people, do you think overall emergency medicine has gotten better with time, like all these conflicts you had run into?
I would say some of the gender norms are better. Number one, there's as many or more women in medicine, right? In my time, it had been 10% women, and it was leaning towards 25% women. Right now, women are taking over the field. So the gender issues aren't as bad. And I think the locker room stuff, like in that Virginia job that I had, what do the real docs think? I like to think that wouldn't stand in most places today, but it was 20 years ago. It was really a very different world. And you can still get into toxic groups that have that. So these are all things to watch if you're in a dynamic, if you're in a group, what is the group? Listen to how people talk to each other and treat each other. There's a casual comfortableness, but is it truly this locker room feeling? Or does it seem like it's a supportive, collaborative environment? And it's tough to tell when you're interviewing, because everybody has their company manners on.
Yeah.
And sometimes you really can't tell. I never thought I'd move all these times and have 8 different jobs, and not counting my locums work. You know what I mean? That was never the plan. Yeah. But that's just how things worked out. You have to be willing to realize when something is a mistake, and nothing is undoable. And one of the things about emergency medicine is we are instantly replaceable. And that's one of the reasons we have such a hard time getting a fair shake, is because now how many programs are there? Like a lot. There's a lot. There's like over 100 programs now, probably 10 times the number of programs as when I was training. And so they're just churning us out all the time. And so there's always that next warm body to take it over if somebody, especially in a desirable place to live, because we like our fun. ED docs, we're fun people in general. We're fun people. Have you ever hung out with rheumatologists? They like all they do is think, and they don't do anything. ED folks do stuff. They're whatever it is, whether it's music, there's a lot of outdoors people, and they're going and they're doing and they're moving. So places that are fun things to do we're going to really gravitate to. And so it's hard. You like Hawaii. So it's hard to find a fair shake at that place, because there's always that next person that can just start tomorrow and be picking up a shift and not miss a beat. So that's the bad part. The good part is if you find yourself in a toxic situation, it's really that easy to just walk away and find a different position. It's harder once you grow roots, when you have kids, if your family is there. You're like your kids' preschool, they have this great teacher, you found an amazing charter school. Those are tougher things. But at the end of the day, you have to say, I have to do what's best for me. There's lots of great places where my kids will be happy. And I've uprooted my kids several times. And it was hard for them, for us. But so far, it's worked out pretty well.
Coming into emergency medicine, did you expect that you'd have to set so many boundaries like this?
I did not. I definitely did not. The dude bro club was usually the surgeons, the surgical subspecialties, especially cardiothoracic, ortho. You expect that culture with there. I didn't think it would be like that in emergency medicine. People are people everywhere you go. And again, emergency medicine is the testosterone-y field. It's gonna attract people that are doers and movers and shakers of all genders. So there's going to be inevitable conflicts. And I honestly think that was the beginning of the end when I didn't get that, as I felt betrayed by my group. I learned I haven't jumped over the conference table to chase after anyone since then. So, you know,
That's all about growth.
lesson learned, yeah.
Do you think we touched on how you might have been a little bit hesitant after that? Has there ever been a time where you might have loosened up on your boundaries, might have said yes to something you don't want to say yes to and regretted it?
I think the biggest thing that comes up in the emergency medicine is covering that extra shift, right? And my experience with doing that is that if I can, I will, somebody's sick, somebody like my exam point. I remember Sam, who I used to work with, great guy. He would throw out his back once in a while. So I'd get that call, hey, I can't move. I'm stuck in bed. Can you cover my shift? And if I could, I did. But it always seemed like when I had the crisis, nobody was available for me. So if you're going to do something for someone, just like any gift you will give, just be aware that nobody's going to remember it. And you're going try and do it because if you can, and it's not a horrible inconvenience, you don't want to miss your kids' kindergarten graduation or their 8th grade band play. Don't let yourself miss those important milestones by covering somebody else, because nobody will cover you. Nobody will do that for you, and you won't get those times back. If you block that time out so you could be there for your son's gymnastics finals, honor that time. They'll figure something out. And they'll tell you nobody else can do it. They'll figure something out. Yeah. So those are the biggest ones, is just realizing that when you cover somebody's shift, they're not going to remember and nobody will be there to cover for you. And don't expect it.
It seems like you were giving into the system that didn't always give back to you. Do you think that ever affected your patient care or relationships or sense of identity? Any of those?
So to be honest and look back, I wonder if everybody thinks the same thing that I did. I wonder if everybody feels like they were always the one doing that extra shift. Because it always seems like you're doing the extra shift, but nobody's there for you. Is that the reality, or is that just the perception? You remember the inconveniences, you don't remember the favors. So I'm not sure, honestly. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I understand like how that can play into burnout. Like everyone feels they're pulling their own weight in a way.
And so I feel like I did more. From a karma standpoint, I should be pretty balanced, because I do feel like when I could, I would do those extra shifts. But especially later in my career, I got really strict about, nope, I've got a thing. It's a non-issue for me. I can't be there.
Yeah. Do you think that word nope or no has changed as your career in emergency medicine has evolved?
Yes, for sure. Because you have to decide in your mind if you're carving out something, and it's usually more than just date night, which is maybe that's why I'm divorced. I don't know. But usually more than date night. Usually if it's your kid's band concert or this gymnastics competition or the regional volleyball game, whatever it is, it's like a thing. And if you said you're going to be there, you need to honor that and realize that's as important as anything else you do. It takes a while to get there. When you're starting out, and especially when you're a mom of young kids, and it's hard just to walk away from your kids and you're missing all these milestones. You miss the first step, you miss the first word. You're trying to breastfeed, but you're exploding at work, and then they gave them the bottle just before you get home. And it's so tough when they're tiny. But there's challenges when they get older too. I don't know.
Have you ever talked to your kids or your family about this? How you feel between the work-life balance and how they perceived it?
My kids remember me being away a lot for a lot of important times. They do. But I feel like I was around enough. When they were tiny, they would go to daycare, but it was important to me that they were only in daycare 3 days a week so that they were home with one of us more than in daycare, so that we were more of a time influence than the daycare. So they actually had some pretty good memories. We had a great daycare when they were little, which was nice. They remember the holidays that I was absent. They remember some family trips that I was absent. My mother-in-law drove me crazy. So I found a lot of reasons as they got older to not go to the annual visits to New Orleans to see them. I was somehow really busy with work, and they remembered that, but that was really more of an excuse than anything else. My ex, he actually tried to dodge it. Oh, why don't you and the kids go and I'll stay home and do this thing? And I'm like, no, that's your mother. You get to own that one. If anybody stays home, it's going to be me. And I think it was when he started trying to ditch the visits. That's when I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. She was a difficult person to be around.
It's all a balancing game.
Yeah. So they remember me not being present for some of those, but they remember me being present for a lot of other things. They know that I was as present as I could be.
No, it seems like you've had a lot of trial and tribulations over the years with when to say no, when to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like when you say no? Like, how do you decide between staying home or going to work?
That's a good question. Staying home versus going to work. I think that's something that evolves every single day. With going back from maternity leave, with my first child, I went back, and that was before FMLA. It was in the 90s. I went back, and I was a 1099 employee until the last 5 years. So if I wasn't at work, I wasn't getting paid. So my maternity leave was, how long do I feel like imposing on my group to cover my shifts and also not getting paid? That was my maternity leave. So my first daughter, I went back at 6 weeks and I cried like the whole day. I cried. So that was a little too soon. And my second one, I did 3 months. And by the last month, I was like calling people, so are you guys tired? I could pick up a shift. How about I work half the day? So for me, I found that about 2 months was my sweet spot. But it took me 3 kids to figure that out. And that's just coming back from maternity leave. So when it comes to, are you working days or are you working nights? Are you going to do 2 days a week or 3? How about that 1 week where you do 4 or 5? But then you have 1 the next week, and how does that juggle out? And then you end up like compressing your shifts and then stretching your shifts out. I found for most of my career, I didn't like working more than 2 days in a row, but I worked at tiny places, so I worked 12s, and 12-hour shifts are long. But when I started traveling, when you're traveling, you don't want to work 2 days a day off, 2 days a day off. You want to compress your shifts. And so I started working 3, 4 in a row. 412s is hard. I don't know if you ever worked 412s. It's hard, especially at a place where you're really busy. Some of these smaller hospitals can get super busy. But I was trying to condense that so I could still, especially my first year of travel when I was just doing that part-time, so I could be home for my custody time for my kid, right? So I had that 1 week and I had to compress that. And so it's constantly evolving. Where are your kids? What are they doing? Do you need to be available weekends or do you need to be available weekdays? What's going on with the dynamics of the group? Who else has needs? And then there's people that might have religious needs, right? Maybe somebody is a strict Orthodox Jew and they don't want to work Saturdays. Maybe somebody is a Seventh-day Adventist and then Sundays are off the table. All of that is going to be part of your group dynamic, and it's going to evolve over time. So you just walk through it and sometimes realize that what's right today may not be right next week or next month or a year from now or 10 years from now. And no matter what, it's not going to be what you imagined it. So just try to be as flexible as you can, because things are going to evolve as your life evolves, as your group evolves. It's always going to change.
Yeah. So how would you advise, say, like an early or a young resident or an early attending who feels guilty setting limits and boundaries or saying no?
You are harder on yourself than anyone else is going to be. We don't get here by being easy and kind to ourselves all the time. But when you're not kind to yourself, nobody else is going to be more kind to you. So it's okay to set boundaries. I actually had to have a talk with a guy that was probably 20 years older than me when I had one of my early jobs. And he couldn't say no. And he would say, well, they have a thing. And I was like, I had plans, but their thing is more important. So I guess I'll just cancel my plans. And I'm like, you're a grown up. Don't do that. Set your limits. Take care of yourself. And taking care of yourself and your professional self involves setting limits. And that could be limits at home that your kids need to understand that them whining about you going to work isn't going to help them and it's not going to help you. You still have to go to work. But it's usually, they get used to it. And it's usually more issues at work, especially if you have a lot of family commitments and you're part-time. Your group often sees you as the one to call because you are part-time, so your time can be more flexible. If you're part-time for a reason, and you have the right to honor that. And it just takes time. It just takes time. And sometimes your group has to learn that you'll help out when you can, but you can't always. In fact, you can't a lot. And if you've carved out that day to do something, sorry, that's my day to bring. You don't tell them that. I would recommend you don't necessarily tell them, I have a commitment that I can't get out of. And maybe that commitment is bringing cupcakes in for your kid's birthday. But if you told your kid you were going to be there, you need to be there. And that's okay to tell your group no. I'm not going to pull everybody's shifts and everybody's fill-ins. That's just, nobody can do that. That's not sustainable. Yeah, the doormat requires somebody lying down, and just don't be that one. Don't lie down.
Yeah.
And it feels good, because it does not feel good to be a doormat, because everybody will walk all over you and take you for granted if you give them the opportunity.
It seems like burnout's getting more attention nowadays with it being recognized in the healthcare system. Do you think the healthcare is actually taking that word into action and making sure everyone gets a good balance between work and life?
I do not think that enough. That should be curriculum. That should be part of the curriculum, is how to avoid burnout, how to have a work-life balance. And I've read some things have come in my news feed about, oh, there's no such thing as work-life balance. If you love work like I do, then you want to work 100 hours a week. It's okay, then I guess I don't love work like you do, because that doesn't sound healthy or sustainable to me. I will tell you, there's who are they called? The Whole Physician is a group of emergency physicians. They're all women, and they do coaching. And actually, they did some coaching for me my last year. They were the ones that, number one, when I said I was done, they're like, yeah, you're done. Their whole shtick is how to teach you to love what you do again, how to approach your job. There's all this negativity, but it isn't the negativity at work that kills you, it's what you bring home. And you're in charge of what you think. You can choose not to carry all that stuff with you home. And they give you all these techniques for how to do that. But that's the bottom line of what they do. And they're life coaches, work coaches. But when I said I was done and had a few sessions with them, they're like, yep, you're done. Okay, so when are you going to leave? And they had me set a deadline. And I was like, what? You're making it real. So I would recommend life coaching, if not with the whole position, with somebody. They're incredibly helpful. And they really got me through my last year. So just having a third party person look at what you're doing and where you're going and help you walk through that. I think that's really helpful. And just give yourself grace, give yourself permission to accept that what you imagined would be your priorities is going to change over time. And that's okay. That's life. That's growing. That's maturing. It's wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hearing about that life coach, it seems like they helped you shift perspective and appreciate it more. What do you think you appreciate the most about emergency medicine?
When I was getting ready to go into medicine, I remember I was in church one day and this woman got hit by a car crossing the street. And I was I was like, I don't know, 18 or 19. I was in college. It was my first year as a pre-med. And I remember them keeping the younger people, and I was one of the younger people. They didn't want us to see the tragedy. And I remember just feeling helpless, just this helpless feeling. And I think ultimately that's why I went into emergency medicine. I'm sorry, looking for my pen. Is because I hated that helpless feeling. I wanted to be able to, in any situation, know what to do. And so that is extremely empowering, knowing that if you're at a stadium event, on an airplane, in a crowded grocery store, wherever, some disaster happens, some terrible thing happens, and you know what to do. You don't always have the right equipment to do what you would like to do, but you know what the next step is, and with the limitations of what resources you have. I can't think of a more powerful feeling in the world than that, than knowing when shit goes down, you know what to do. My kids say that I would be kept safe in the compounds during the zombie apocalypse. We all would, because my artist daughter, yeah, they pitched me over the edges. I wouldn't last 10 minutes. Nobody wants shiny pictures during the apocalypse, but they think I'd be safe in the compound. Just knowing that when the zombie apocalypse comes, you're going to be protected because people value your skill set. That's cool. And I had 32 good years at the bedside. The last few were rough, but I wish I had. I'm a shameless plug for my book here, Resilience and Burnout, a Rural Emergency Physician's Journey Through COVID and Back Again. That should be published by the end of the year. So I started writing down my stories when I started doing locums. I used to tell the kids stories once in a while, storyteller, obviously. I wish I had written down my stories for 30 years, but I didn't. But I've written down for the last 6, and just walking through COVID and out of it, and what eventually led to my burnout. But I had a lot of good years, and I really loved what I did for a long time. And I think it's just time for the next generation to take over. I just had to realize that my time was over. And one thing the whole position really helped me do was I just kept on feeling like a failure. I'm walking away. And especially at the tiny hospitals where I work at, most of the docs I work with are family practice trained. So like they can't do their own intubations, or they don't know how to do a chest tube. And we're 70 miles away from a trauma surgeon. it can get scary when things go bad and they don't have my skill set. And so by me walking away, the person that's going to step into my position probably doesn't have the skills that I have. So there's a lot of guilt involved. You get really attached to the little towns that you work in and the people in the community. And I got so much out of that community and loved being there. But it was time. And so they helped me realize you're not a failure. You're not giving up. You had 32 successful years at the bedside. That is a success story. And it's okay that you're moving on to your next thing, whatever that is.
If you could go back to your younger self, one piece of advice, what would you tell yourself?
I think the number one thing that I did not do, which is the number one thing I try and tell people that I'm mentoring, is to take care of your professional self. We all read about take care of yourself. Mom, have that glass of wine with your girlfriends, have a spa day. That's fine. But to get through what you're going through, you really need to find your brothers in arms. And it typically isn't, you're not going to see eye to eye with everyone in your group. Usually some people in your group, but usually not everyone in your group. So joining a professional society, and that can be at a state level, your state medical association. I've been doing some advocacy with the Washington State Medical Association. For me, it's been AAEM. Other people prefer ACEP. ACEP is much bigger. AAEM is smaller and a little more advocacy driven. ACEP is a little, I don't know what their focus is because I'm not an ACEP. But there is an interest group out there for everyone, whether you're interested in women in emergency medicine or Jedi topics, or I started the rural emergency medicine interest group. There's a palliative care, there's an aging, there's a young physician section. Whatever your passion is, go to the conference, join an interest group, find your people, because you will feel so, taking those 3 days a year, that's all it is. And then maybe like quarterly meetings for the group, taking those 3 days a year. And I was so guilty for leaving my children that for 20 years, I didn't do any of that. I couldn't leave. I just felt guilty. How can I leave my kid for 3 more days? I already have to leave them for work all the time. If I had any idea how lifted up and supported that I would feel, and you come back just ready to jump in and rejuvenate. And it's not just going to the lectures. Yeah, go to the lectures and so on. But do the social things and the get together, and especially those interest groups. Find what drives you. Find your people. And when you find your people within the group and you get in your table of 10 or 20 or 30 people, that's when you start making real connections. And the joy that will bring to your practice, that will then translate into empowerment and pride, and be able to bring that home and feel positive about everything. It's just indescribable. So I would say find your people and take care of your professional self. And for me, that's being part of them and being involved in several of the interest groups. For you, it could look like something completely different, but don't just do remote CME. Go to these things, network with people, find people, and it will, or stay in touch with your friends from residency, whatever it looks like to you. But that's the number one thing that I wish I had done more when I was earlier in my career.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hitchcock, for joining us today, sharing your story and answering the questions with the same bravery that took you through all these years in emergency medicine.
Thank you. It was really fun. Thank you for letting me pontificate.
Of course, of course. Yeah, this is awesome. I really appreciate it because I feel like you have such a unique story. And like you said, you like telling stories and you have a knack for it for sure. And so it was great to get you out here and just hear all this experience because, man, they really put you through it, but also like you enjoyed all of it going through.
I did. It was a fun ride.
We hope you have enjoyed this podcast from the American Academy of Emergency Medicine. AAEM is a nonprofit professional association of over 8,000 emergency physicians dedicated to board certification and democratic group practice. For more information about AAEM, visit our website at www.aaem.org.